Determined to unlock the secrets of this game, I began my run with a motley crew of survivors with a reasonable chance of survival. Most likely to survive was of course Dr. Chef, who, as their name suggests, was good at open heart surgery on both dead and alive things, and Excavar, as their name also suggests, was good with plants. The location? A permanent summer biome, sparse with vegetation and tree cover, and a river defense system that had no downsides whatsoever, so long as you don't have any issues with being drenched each morning as you head out to collect the paltry scraps that hold the key to your survival in this barren wasteland because the corn you planted won't be ready until summer. No point in happily eating lavish meals of potatoes and rice when you can subsist on raw agave and packaged survival meals. Truly, I was giving my colonists the best chance of survival. This all was fit to complement the true star of this story, Old Geezer, a 65-year-old sexagenarian with a minor case of Alzheimer's. For those unaware, health conditions become commonplace for pawns over the age of 40, and more so as they get older. In Rimworld, Alzheimer's can affect anyone over the age of 33. It takes 5 years to completely consume the individual, at which point they're subjected to a permanent 20% slowdown and a confused wandering affliction every 4 days, leaving them generally unable to eat, sleep, or work for the duration of the affliction. That means we're on a clock to get as much work out of Old Geezer as possible before he transitions from pawn to potato. Thankfully, a natural crevice in the rock face provided early shelter, and even with the confused wandering spell on the 10th day of the mission, we were able to get a roof over our heads and a barracks built in record time. Barracks living isn't the best living, but one of the perks of Alzheimer's is that transient negative thoughts provide no mood debuff because, well, they already forgot about them. This turned out to be a net positive, as his Alzheimer's prevented several of the mood debuffs from being stuck indoors all the time because he couldn't remember if he had been indoors all the time. For this colony to survive long-term on this map, though, its salvation lived in the ability to sow and reap their own trees and lumber, of which this map had very little and of which we would need a lot to create any sort of hospitable river travel system. An additional oversight on my part was that our geriatric protagonist was incapable of research, requiring me to use Dr. Chef to study and learn for the colony. No big issue, he came equipped with a level 8 passionate intellect stat line and was at least semi-capable for the job. This did mean that I had to send out Old Geezer, who had a propensity to get lost and wander for hours, on long journeys to collect food for the colony to subsist on before the first batch of corn grew. On the 10th day of April-May, we had our first glimpse into the horrors of Alzheimer's, as Old Geezer forgot where he was while mining out his own bedroom, wandering aimlessly for 2 hours before collapsing from exhaustion in his bed. 3 days later, it became apparent to me that a standard schedule was going to be impossible to maintain for this colony, as the interruptions to Old Geezer's work and sleep caused mental breaks if he had to continue as if nothing had happened. So, our colony became an old folks' care facility that night, with every colonist getting to choose what they wanted to do no matter the time of day. Production down, micromanaging up, but less mental breaks. The slowness cannot be understated, though. Even with the reductions in mental breaks, Old Geezer tested the patience of the other colonists, and our severe lack of wood left everyone walking through the water multiple times each day. It wasn't until the 26th day that the first barracks room was finished, with our colonists suffering from chronic starvation from our failure to prepare for the obvious needs of the colony. Old Geezer continued to drone on, though, mining walls without issue until September, when he first became infected by the plague, spent the entire night of September the 7th wandering and concurrently having a mental break insulting spree against another colonist. Rimworld never ceases to amaze me in its parallels to the real-world human experience, with our confused grandfather yelling at his surrogate children all night long until one went berserk and tried to murder him. Thankfully, the thought of a slow and painful death was enough to snap him out of his brain fog as he fled, for the safety of the barracks, to lick his wounds. Excavar foolishly then turned his rage to the chef, who brutally assaulted him with a knife, ending the berserk spree in mere moments. On the 12th day of September, Old Geezer and Dr. Chef acquired a case of sensory mechanites, significantly slowing down our base building progress. On the 15th of September, just 3 days later, our favorite old man went on an overnight food binge before collapsing from extreme exhaustion 12 hours and 11 meals later. The first day of winter was a day later, and was marred with yet another 2-hour confusion spell, with Mad Rat's mere feet from his aimless wandering. December ended on a sour note, as our Dr. Chef succumbed to an unstoppable infection and general lack of medical knowledge among the remaining members. The sensory mechanites from earlier that month probably didn't help either. Moods were at an all-time low. Well, at least Excavar's was. Old Geezer failed to recall many of the issues of previous days, living in blissful ignorance to the tragedies of the past. What I would pay to understand the intricate problem-solving that he had to do on a daily basis, as his sensory mechanites plagued him with more pain, and the graves continued to be more and more filled, wondering if he has always been in this much pain, or had this few friends. But I digress. The next year brought a small spark of hope for the colony, with the capturing of 2 raid members with subpar but passable given the circumstances stat lines. Unfortunately, Excavarii became infected with even more mechanites, these new ones being fibrous in nature, causing constant need for medical care when tending was due, otherwise he was very likely to fall over from the pain. Old Geezer, in the meanwhile, still questioning his own reality, had reached 12 mining and 17 crafting, meaning the base expansion process was accelerating rapidly as his health continued to deteriorate. By the end of his second Juggist, his Alzheimer's had become major, leading to a 15% degradation to his brain, and with it, a higher propensity for longer and more frequent confusion. Turtle, one of our lucky prisoners, had joined the colony after a long and arduous recruitment. Turns out having your warden be an Alzheimer's patient does not instill hope or security in prospective colonists. Soon after, by some miracle or divine intervention, Tori had joined as well. A long year and a half after arrival, the crashed party of 3 had become 4, easing the burden on the aging geriatric. Room by room, Old Geezer made domiciles for the friends that he routinely forgot. In those empty regions of his brain grew opportunities for greater and greater construction projects, becoming a globally known master in construction and a master of sorts in mining. The base grew to 3 rooms, then 4, until each had their own space and order returned to the colony. Research projects began again with the surplus of hands and work hours, leading to innovations like tree sowing, chem fuel generators, and advanced lights, all of which helped remove the need to constantly chop cacti for wood. On the 6th of September, almost a year to the day since sensory mechanites infested the bodies of our survivors, Old Geezer made his first masterwork bed, carving into the bed frame a crystalline memory of Tony reminiscing over a grave of a lost friend. It's incredible he produced a piece of art with such emotional connection, somehow knowing through empathy itself that this grave meant something to Tony, who he couldn't remember most days, and that the person in the ground was important to him, even though he couldn't remember that he was likely the one that delivered the final death blow. Looking back, it was truly a golden age of innovation and discovery for the colony. Not that Old Geezer remembered any of it, but such is life. But as Robert Frost once said, nothing gold can stay. And as the Alzheimer's progressed and the main character of our tale became more and more unreliable, there became a need to train a younger replacement. Beggars can't be choosers though, so after an aggressive round of negotiations with the local tribe, we settled on Replacement Geese, a 42-year-old cave builder with a burning passion for everything that Old Geezer was and more. Jobs slowly began shifting towards the replacement, as Old Geezer was allowed to live the more senile life of cleaning and hauling that he deserved. And just in time too, for on the day of his 67th birthday, and just shy of 2 years in the tunnels, Old Geezer became frail, a death blow to miners and constructors. It was truly demoralizing, his level 18 construction being surpassed by the novice replacement. Now crippled in mind and body, he was relegated to just cleaning and not allowed to leave the base, solely in an attempt to prolong his usefulness for as long as possible. It was an interesting life lesson to stumble upon, that being one of torch passing to the younger generations. On one side of the base lived a man who could not remember his name or the faces of his friends. Known worldwide as a master miner and constructor, but now unable to conduct the tasks that gave rise to his fame. In total, he suffered through 11 bouts of confusion over those 2 years, wandering aimlessly for 47 total hours. 1.3% of his life on the Rim was lost to confusion. Were he not stricken by affliction, would the colony have survived better? On the other side of the base lies the hope for the future, a keen underground girl that strives to dig and shape as well as the master who fails to remember her face. I find myself thinking back to the first masterpiece work, and the depth of empathy portrayed, wondering what Old Geezer remembered, or forgot near the end, if he knew that the people he lived with were his friends or foes, and if all the lessons that he had learned over the course of his lifetime were passed along in due time, before they were lost to a brain condition befit for nobody. Then, of course, I remember what happened next and am reminded that no, in fact, none of it was passed along. For just as the dwarves dug too greedily towards their own tombs in the mines of Moria, so too did my colonists, upsetting the local bugs and reaching an untimely demise in the process. A tragic end to a tale of loss, confusion, and doubt. Ironically, the tamed elephants, who wandered in after the fight concluded, will remember the knowledge that our sexagenarian failed to pass on, but will ultimately be unable to express any of it, because they're dumb elephants. Dumb as they are, though, at least they never forget. I hope you enjoyed this story, and perhaps you'll enjoy another one about a socially approved alien genocide and exploitation, linked in the top right. This has been Retroflux, and I'll see you in the next one.